Guys, welcome to the Adam Fitch Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Fitch. You should know that by the name of the podcast and the fact that this is, I think, the 20th episode. I could be completely wrong on that. I haven't checked because I'm really professional like that. Work life's got in the way of all preparation time. And yeah, so I think it's the 20th. If so, that means I've been going for roughly 5 months now, which is insane. I haven't missed a week yet. I don't plan on doing so. Showing everyone else up, or at least I'm trying to. So today I'm joined by a special guest. I say that every time because if they're on the podcast, then they've got to be on for a reason, and they know what they're on about. I'm not going to have any LinkedIn esports expert, grifter, fraud people on here by any means. So today it's I've got to check the pronunciation of your surname. Actually, I think I'll get it right. But is it Matt Rutledge?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I never want to presume because I could fuck up and make myself look a fool that way. But you're the director of mobile gaming for Complexity, right?
That's right, and you can call me MobileMatt because that is my specialization.
Mobile. What could I do for myself then to have like a catchy name like that? Like Angry Adam. I'm known for being pretty angry actually, so we could probably go with that. So yeah, MobileMatt, the man himself. If you haven't guessed by that kind of nickname, that online user and his job title, he is a mobile esports absolute expert. No one better than him in the absolute world. I'm not going to big him up too much. But no man, so where would you say it all started with you when it comes to mobile esports specifically? Because I've never had anyone on this podcast that deals in that side of esports, and it's not talked about anywhere near as much as PC and console, obviously.
Right, and mobile itself is a really new industry, so certainly something that I hear a lot. Congratulations, by the way, on 20 episodes. That's an incredible feat.
It's not too bad, man. Not too bad.
Yeah, but I've been involved in mobile esports almost from the very beginning. So going back to 4 years ago when Clash Royale launched, that was when I really started entering the esports industry. At the time, I was working as entrepreneur in residence for an investment firm in Texas, and basically got the nod to start an in-house startup using our development and capital. And being a huge gamer, I wanted to start a company in the esports industry, and that was kind of how I got personally involved. And at that time, again, Clash Royale had just recently launched, and so as someone that played that a lot, I chose that game as the one to get the company off on the right foot because I knew the turf. And that positioned me personally in that game at a really interesting time because we were actually the first endemic sponsor in the scene, and so got to explore a lot of novel marketing campaigns and things that are very specific to the mobile esports industry. We were actually the first to contract a professional Clash Royale team, the first to go out and host tournaments and sponsored events on YouTube and Twitch, and then really have just been trying to stay at the forefront of the mobile sports industry ever since, and been in a position where we were able to get the ball rolling on a lot of different things. One of those was a series called Mobile Gaming Mondays, which was the first recurring live event series for mobile sports title in the United States. And we actually did that at the TCL Chinese Theater in Hollywood. That was a really awesome event. I loved that. Tried to create a format that was mobile first, open floor format that isn't limited by hardware, and actually turned that into a bit of like a mobile gaming festival. It was a blast. About 2 years ago, a little over 2 years now, got the great chance to join Jason Lake at Complexity Gaming and have been director of mobile here ever since.
So I have to give some background on my mobile gaming experience. I actually think I've played more than the general person. But
awesome.
But it's I don't mean this to be demeaning to esports and mobile esports or anything, but it was mainly when I would visit the bathroom, right? In the most couth way I can put that, right? It'd be like, all right, I need something to fill my time for a bit to keep myself occupied, and then you find yourself you've been there for an hour, your legs are dead, and you've lost 1,000 points in Clash Royale or something, you've gone down so much. It was so I played a lot of Clash Royale, a lot of Brawl Stars, but those were two games, so I guess you could say Supercell is the way for me. I've never tried anything else, but and at one point when Brawl Stars first came out, I thought I could go pro. I swear to you, I thought I had it, and then people soon started catching up, and then I realized, okay, yeah, I should just leave it as it is and stick with writing, But so why mobile esports for you? What was the kind of the game or the reason why you decided to go into that side of things?
Yeah, I discovered pretty early on that there was something huge on the horizon for gaming and mobile esports specifically. And like anybody else, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't really tell you what the future of the industry is going to be. I've got some great guesses. I'm happy to share some of that with you. What I know is that if we can just kind of continue building at the periphery of this industry, it's going to turn into something really special because it's got everything that you need for a sustainable esports ecosystem. You've got these massive player bases who involve players that just intrinsically love competition. And so that goes, a great example of that is a game like Clash of Clans, which for all intents and purposes, and yet there's been a really thriving competitive scene that's developed even from that. And they have esports scene with over $1 million worth of prizes every year. And so it's almost kind of inevitable that when you get a group of gamers together in large numbers, that they'll just be competitive and they'll create a scene like this. And so again, just knowing that it's probably going to be a lot different than PC and console, I want to keep building into mobile specific initiatives in the esports industry here.
Okay, so I went to the I don't know exactly what it's called, but it was basically the World Cup or the World Championship for Clash Royale in Japan in like 2018.
Oh, excellent.
It was the first event,
Yeah.
the first LAN I ever went to, which is wild. Like flew for like 12 hours to watch it. It was very very interesting as it was. And yeah, I'd say from memory, so like complexity and 100 Thieves were like some of the founding teams or like the inaugural teams in the CRL, right? And then from then I haven't seen too much from it. I know OGN kind of stepped in, and now they've presumably because of PUBG Corp, they've retracted their presence in North America and let go of people and such. So like, can you discuss like the Clash Royale League a little bit and like your involvement in that with complexity and such?
Absolutely. So Complexity Gaming was involved in the first 3 seasons of CRL. And we had a phenomenal team that did really well over that time. We actually had our players featured on the Conan O'Brien show, represent the game and mobile gaming to their audience. And it was an absolute blast. Complexity Gaming did drop out of the league. We're not participating in it here. But there were, like you mentioned, a lot of there was some turbulence with the league, just with OGN retracting, and then also, of course, with the coronavirus situation and all of these large live events that have now had to be delayed or moved online. And so that's what we're looking at now. Supercell did release information announcing that they are going to be transitioning to an online format for CRL this year.
Right.
But that will be starting next month.
Okay, and so what games, what mobile titles does Complexity compete in at the moment? Are there any? Because I'm not aware of any, but I'm not up to date on that side of things, unfortunately.
No, of course. And so I can kind of give a broad overview. There are a ton of mobile esports titles that are actually bigger than most people think.
Right.
Complexity Gaming specifically, we've got 2 great Fortnite mobile creators, Ducky the Gamer and Roland, and have had a lot of fun and a lot of success with both of those guys. We also had a Ducky on a national Samsung commercial last year as well. So really awesome to have guys that really represent mobile as an industry at the forefront from that perspective too. But there's a ton. Clash Royale is still really going strong, even though they, like a lot of leagues right now, are having to transition to online formats. Still have really high hopes for that league. Brawl Stars, of course, and Clash of Clans as the other Supercell titles. They also have, again, over $1 million worth of pricing for both of those games as well. And Brawl Stars itself has like this recurring monthly qualifier that is a really unique format. So you can accrue points here, and then at the end, there'll be a large world championship. There's also, of course, PUBG Mobile, which is still going really strong. A game like Free Fire that is really under the radar. Most people haven't even heard of the game.
Huge on YouTube, right?
Passing. I mean, they've had streams that have gotten 2 million concurrent viewers on a single broadcast. Yeah. And it's just ridiculous. So, and that's primarily coming from a single country. So it's really wild what's going on in Brazil right now. And you also have, again, games like Fortnite Mobile that are going strong, and ones on the horizon as well. Call of Duty Mobile, massively popular game, especially in the West. So a lot of us in the industry have really high hopes for what's going to come out of there from an esports perspective. And then, of course, later this year, you've got League of Legends Mobile or Wild Rift coming out as well. So definitely a lot of excitement, especially this year in mobile sports.
Are all of your your players and creators and such on the mobile side, are they all American, or have you gone to say Asia, for example? Because I've noticed with like TSM and Fnatic, so TSM partnered with Entity Gaming, I believe, and then Fnatic's got like an Asian PUBG mobile roster as well. Like I've noticed that like Western brands going into the East to get the players, because that's seemingly where the better people are. But I could be wrong on that.
Well, it's a really unique strategy for tier 1 esports organizations to enter emerging markets, because mobile is one of the best ways to do that. You have games that are massively popular in India or Southeast Asia, like PUBG Mobile. And then, of course, you have games that are popular in Brazil, like Free Fire. And so you have these, Western brands that are entering these titles, but they're doing it in a really authentic way for that game and for that region. And of course, bringing that brand and the resources and infrastructure that are in place to really, build in that region as well. So it ends up being a great situation for everybody involved. But when it comes to complexity gaming strategy specifically, again, it really just depends on the game. Right now we have two guys that are American in Fortnite Mobile, but that, depending on the game, that strategy could change for sure.
Okay, and is mobile esports content as big as like the actual gameplay and the tournaments are?
Yeah, it is actually ridiculously big on YouTube. So I think the stat was 6 of the top 10 games on YouTube were mobile titles or a game that has a mobile version of it, like Fortnite.
Yeah.
And when you put it into perspective like that, it's actually incredibly huge. And I think that as time progresses, we'll see a broader trend taking place. So we're already seeing signs of it now, but where these games are, the player base is certainly more casual, but they're becoming more and more hardcore. And as games themselves, the titles are becoming more competitive titles, right? We're not, talking about the Candy Crushes nowadays, even though that game is still ridiculously huge. But the games are getting more competitive. And so then you have the Supercell games, and then now you have the, Battle Royale games. And so this broader shift is taking place. So I think what we're going to see is a lot more competitive interest from players as well, continuing over time.
Yeah, well, like one of like the kind of, it's not even trending at this point. It's kind of like a mainstay narrative or discussion when it comes to mobile esports is the division between like the West and the East. And I mean, in the West, we've already got PC players who look down on console players and controller players, and then somehow mobile gamers are seen beneath that. It's a really weird perception to me where, like, realistically they're all on the same page to me. I mean, like, if it comes to actually competing all at the same time cross-platform in, say, Fortnite, of course you're going to see some differences just because of the nature of the consoles or the platforms in which they're playing. But yeah, it seems like it's a really weird perception there. Do you have any kind of insight on that or an opinion on it? Because it always kind of baffled me.
Yeah, and again, like you're talking about, this is a stigma that esports as an industry has kind of had to fight through for decades, right? Where people from traditional sports have said, man, esports is not real sports. And now it's funny that it's happening within the esports industry with console people saying, oh, mobile esports are not real esports, But it's really fascinating. And obviously, from us, from the insider's perspective, people can believe what they want, right? I mean, we know what mobile esports is, and we know that this is real, and we love doing it, and we're going to keep doing us, you know what I mean? So it's not changing anything from that perspective, but I think what's going to end up leading to that stigma of really eroding is just results. And so we need more successful mobile esports leagues, a lot more representatives of the industry to come in and educate people, which is, again, why I love taking opportunities like this. I really appreciate you having me on, because, it's a chance to kind of introduce some people to this industry. And that's really important to me as someone that wants to kind of be an educator from that perspective, but also representatives on the content side. So what creators are going to be the faces of their titles, right? And how can their brands be built? Pro players as well. So I think, as we kind of have more and more successful mobile esports running, that's something that's just going to be evident and kind of erode over time, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And one thing I saw a lot of people say is like 2020 is the year, like that stigma will be gone, and like mobile esports will break through as such. Which, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, it don't really make sense to make that prediction unless there's something behind it. Well, most people think it's just a matter of time, but it feels to me like it's been just a matter of time for quite some time now. And when Call of Duty Mobile came out, there were a lot of people then, I think even including myself, saying this might be the one that like breaks through and destroys the barrier that's there. But I haven't seen too much there, especially on like the esports side. I don't know if there's any kind of homegrown community-based tournaments there, but I haven't seen anything official from Activision Blizzard and such, though obviously that entity is concentrating on something else right now, and that's ripping people off $25 million at a time. So, I don't know. Do you think the game, or do you even think it'll just be one game that breaks it down? If so, do you think the game's already out yet, or it's yet to come? Like, is COD Mobile the one that's going to do it, or...
Yeah, what a phenomenal question, right? And, this is something that I spent a lot of time thinking about, is what actually is going to need to happen in order for mobile gaming and mobile esports to really gain traction in the West. And because again, if you look at the East, like you're talking about, there are these massively popular titles like Honor of Kings that have just swept the nation with China. And so something like that is certainly, bound to happen at some point. One would think in mobile esports in the West as well, at least have one title really sweep, across the region and just become a phenomenon like it has in so many other areas, like Brazil, like India, like China. And I think that the market is poised for that. Again, you just have so many players. You have all the infrastructure set up in order to handle something like that. And a lot of us in mobile esports were hoping that would be Call of Duty Mobile. And unfortunately, like you mentioned, there haven't been comprehensive esports plans executed. They've had small events held by Garena, I believe, in Southeast Asia, and they've teased esports plans this year, but they have not announced anything officially. So unfortunately, we are still waiting for that. The game's been out for about 6 months now. It's speculation, but it's possible that the situation with coronavirus did complicate some plans that they had.
Yeah.
That would certainly be a reasonable expectation, but this is a game that just completely took over the United States specifically when it was launched. They reached 100 million downloads in the first week of this game being released, which was a record. And then they also announced that 42% of their revenue was being driven from the US market, which, again, as someone in the mobile esports industry, you'd love to see that. That is a signal that, hey, this could be the one that really unlocks the industry for us here. So we are still obviously really hopeful that Call of Duty Mobile is roll out comprehensive esports plans. Is it going to be the game to put it on the map? We'll see. I love to think that it is. But again, we also have Wild Rift though launching later this year, which a lot of people are hoping for as well.
And when I think of titles that have been mishandled, it's actually PUBG. But then I look at PUBG Mobile, which is obviously operated by Tencent, and Tencent are, by all intents and purposes, the evil overlords that are ruling everything and slowly getting the fingers in every single pie that exists. But I can't deny that they've done a really good job from what I've seen with the PMCO and all of the kind of regional things that they've got going there. And we've seen such as I think Space Station Gaming may have 2 teams, an Indian team and then another one. I'm not overly brushed up. I just know Space Station actually launched its own mobile kind of division with was it Clash with Ash and Power? I want to say
Powerbang, yeah.
I want to say Powerbang, but I thought it sounded ridiculous if I got it wrong, If I said Powerbang and that was entirely wrong, I'd be like, oh shit, I look alright, div. But yeah, obviously they've seen the appeal and the opportunity there. And I've always kind of touted SSG as one of the smartest organizations. It's never really gone for the biggest titles. It's gone for the ones with really good developer support and those that will offer partnerships with the team. So there's skins in game and such. And the fact that they've doubled down on PUBG Mobile and they're in quite a few different titles. To me, PUBG Mobile seems like the no-brainer choice for the game that can break through. But I don't know how big it is over here as opposed to in the East,
Right. Yeah. Their primary regions definitely are Southeast Asia and India.
Yeah.
It is popular around the world. I believe they have, I think it was 500 million total downloads.
Jesus Christ.
That stat, but the game itself is just massive. So certainly when you have that kind of player base, there's a big pie for a lot of people. But yeah, I definitely have a lot of respect for Space Station Gaming as well. What Sean Duras and the whole crew over there have done has been really inspiring, and they have one of these really creative ways of positioning a brand as just a really cool group of people, right? And mobile's set up well for that as kind of the cool younger brother of the esports industry. So I think that's one of the reasons why they've had a brand alignment with mobile specifically. There's also great organizations like Tribe Gaming who recently raised $1 million. And yeah, here in mobile, there's a lot of organizations, or I would say, a handful of strong endemic mobile organizations that are built for the future as well in this industry. And one of the things that they're kind of hoping for is something happens like Loud with Brazil. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but for the audience here, Loud is actually one of the largest esports organizations in the world, but most people have never even heard of them because they got their roots in Free Fire. And so if you were actually just to look at the numbers of that organization, they go toe-to-toe with the FaZe Clan, with the 100 Thieves, as far as their reach on social media, purely because of that's kind of a lot of these endemic mobile organizations are hoping for is that they'll be the one to kind of catch fire and ride the wave from the very beginning.
I'd never heard of that organization. I'll be completely honest with you. And I
Look 'em
literally,
up. Yeah.
I literally, my entire life is esports and staying on top of everything.
Yeah.
You know, so that says everything.
It will shock you. Yeah,
that says
I'll send you some
everything.
statistics to compare.
I'd be really interested in that.
Yeah.
Do you, and so as you say, with like endemic mobile organizations and such, investing and doing really well and being prominent and such, do you think it would be worthwhile for more quote unquote tier 1 organizations from like the PC titles and such in investing in, or do you think it'll be better for the scene if it is like the homegrown organizations as such?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. For the Clash Royale League specifically, there were a lot of tier 1 traditional esports organizations that became part of that league. Yeah. Ultimately, what I think is going to be best for the industry is that whatever organizations that are involved are genuinely interested in that game and genuinely interested in mobile as a whole in order to properly support their players and build brands. And, it's one thing to participate in a league, right? But it's another to actually be a catalyst and an advocate for the game and mobile as a whole and be a partner. All the stakeholders that are involved in operating in esports are running in tandem and creating this sustainable ecosystem for everyone. So organizations certainly need to give back and create content around their team and build up brands and create exciting engagements and activations with sponsors to bring more money in as well. So it really is a total package, but I've seen a lot of success from endemic organizations that are much smaller than others, and I've seen tier 1 organizations do well and some not do so well. So it really, I think it just comes back to that authenticity and the genuine interest in kind of growing the games that they're personally involved in.
That makes complete sense. And I've got like the most pressing, super serious question, the hardest one that will be to answer. Right? What games are you playing at the moment? Which ones have got your attention?
Yeah, so I always go back to Clash Royale personally. That's just something that is near and dear to my heart. That's where I got my start from. But personally, I've also kind of play tested a lot of up and coming mobile titles. I try to be one of the first in the alphas in order to just kind of play test and get a grasp on games that are coming out. So I'm really excited actually for the next release that's coming from Super Evil Megacore. They call it Project Spellfire. They haven't released any details really about it publicly, but this is the publisher behind Vainglory that released, in my personal opinion, one of the most beautiful games that you will ever see on mobile. From a graphics perspective and a gameplay perspective with a MOBA on mobile is fascinating. It is a huge achievement. But that publisher has since taken their best employees away from that game to create this new project called Spellfire. I cannot wait for that to be released. I also am really excited for Wild Rift. There's been obviously other mobile MOBAs that have come out, like Arena of Valor. They're taking a lot of inspiration from those types of games that have been released, but they're fine-tuning it and making it true to the League of Legends IP. And everything that I've seen and everyone that I know that's played it has said it's an absolutely brilliant mechanical game for mobile. So that's really exciting as well. I can't wait for that to come out.
Are there like genres or like genre of games, so say like FPSs and your MOBAs and such, that work better than others on mobile, would you say?
Sure, absolutely. Actually, that's a really great point because I think that that's true for every single platform.
Yeah.
Right? It'd be very difficult to play a game like StarCraft on console, and it'd be really difficult to play a game like Rocket League on PC, right? Without the use of the controller. So it's really natural that some games will be platform specific. So from that perspective, I think that there are a whole slew of control mechanics specific to mobile that haven't truly been tapped into and leaned into quite yet. Vainglory did a really creative job of that by creating a touch-based interface for MOBAs. But then there's also a whole, there's gyro, which is kind of the motion sensor mechanic, and swipe mechanics, and lots of different things that are possible with mobile that haven't truly been leaned into as like the backbone of the control mechanics for a title yet. But then at the same time, right, so that's one end of the spectrum. The other end is that we're seeing a lot of games now that are trending platform agnostic. So take as an example, right? So that is the same game experience, whether you're playing that on PC or console or mobile. And there's a large amount of publishers that are really believing in that as a philosophy, that games no longer are limited to a single platform, but that it's more of this broader experience that is happening, and you as a player consume and engage with that experience wherever you are. So whether you're at your PC or on the go or on the toilet, like you were talking about, tap into that game and have, share that passion with, other people, regardless of what device you're using. It's the same game experience. So it's this really interesting spectrum that's going on versus, platform specific titles and then also platform agnostic.
Yeah. Do you ever see a world in which, say, there's a mobile player competing against like PC players, for example, like the Fortnite World Cup in 2022, for example, right? Hypothetically, or is it just too much of a challenge because of the differences in how the games are played, like literally control wise and such, and obviously with a bigger monitor, you can see better and spot people better, and I assume that leads to better accuracy at times and stuff. So, do you ever see a point where there'll be that kind of crossover, or do you think it'll kind of remain separate, even though there are these platform agnostic games out there now?
I mean, that's a great question. And again, it really does depend on the game itself. If you take a title like Clash Royale, there's no competitive advantage whether you're playing that on mobile or on PC. It's the same game. But then pick a title like Fortnite, and actually just recently, Epic hosted a competition that combined console and mobile in the same side, and then PC was on the other side. So console and mobile players were going at it against each other. And something really fascinating into this, there were a lot of scrimmages, right? Of course, pro players are finding, they're trying to, get in their best form for this competition. And so mobile and console players for the very first time were scrimmaging against each other. And what ended up happening was a scrim server that was run by console players ended up kicking out all of the mobile players because they were so frustrated that they kept winning and they kept being aggressive. They're like, oh, they're spamming, the W key or whatever. And mobile players actually ended up winning a wide amount of those competitions when that competition happened. But there were a lot of things that led into that. Obviously, like mobile players were a bit more aggressive because evidently they didn't have the experience to know how to play in that competitive format. That's what console players were saying. But then also mobile had access to 120 FPS, which console did not have. And they were saying like, oh, that's not fair, so we're going to kick you out. And it was really, really interesting. But mobile players ended up, playing a little bit too hard for the console players from that perspective.
Bloody hell, I'm obviously really behind on this stuff, but I don't know where I would go to stay up to date with everything, because there's already so much to keep up to date with anyway, without busting into this brand new, what for me would be a brand new world, Yeah,
it's really tough, and that's something that I really, really hope to see in the near future here is proper mobile-specific coverage of everything that's happening in the scene, because there's so much going on and so much excitement and ambition from players and content creators and stuff, and I really think it deserves a lot more coverage. So anything that I can personally do, if somebody's listening to help make that happen, I'm definitely happy to do it.
It might be something I'm interested in at Esports Insider, honestly, because obviously we're like the industry business side of stuff, but we covered Tribe Gaming, their investment, 1.04 million. I don't know why they didn't just say 1 million, but it was 1.04 million investment from Gordon Hayward, and there was a wrestler, and I think like the CEO of Super Mega as well, actually. But
that's right.
There we go. Well, my memory's not too bad then. But yeah, there definitely is a market for it, I think. It would just be finding somebody who can work at the intersection of mobile esports and business. And it's hard enough to find people who are business writers anyway in esports in general.
Right.
So that may be an obstacle for us, but I do understand the kind of the demand for it and the audience there. It's just a kind of a matter of finding the right person. If we could clone you, for example, so you weren't too timing on complexity, then that would be great. So we could stay up to date with things. But yeah, it is a real challenge in esports. I find because in sports it's hard for a journalist doesn't necessarily call themselves like a sports journalist. They have their own beat, right? So you're a football journalist or rugby or cricket if you like boring sports or something, But in esports, it's hard for the current climate of esports with the pay and the views that websites get and such. It's it's hard to have a particular beat. So you typically have to be well rounded, and what that means is you have to stay on top of everything all the time. And that also means it's kind of easy to miss things or forget them quickly because there's just so much going on. So for me to be fully aware of what's going on the mobile side of things is difficult when I don't even know what's going on a lot of the time in Asia and such, We've brought on dedicated reporters for India and Southeast Asia, but it's sourcing those stories. It's impossible for me to do. I don't know the places I need to look, and I also kind of feel like it's the same for mobile esports a bit. As you say, if there was like a dedicated place for it, I'm sure there is somewhere, but there's probably not doing the best job. It will make things a lot easier for us, so we could shine a bit more light on what's going on over there, because obviously I've seen it before where Fwiz is tweeting out like the YouTube stats for one of the Free Fire tournaments, and I'm like, what the actual fuck, why are we not doing anything on this whatsoever? But it's like, where the hell do I start? You know, I almost feel like I'm too old. Like, I'm actually the old person now looking down like, I don't understand these youngsters, is how I almost feel.
Well, listen, man, I learned a long time ago that, the only sustainable advantage that esports organizations can have is learning faster than other people. And it's exactly that reason, is that there's so many games that are popping up rapidly nowadays. Again, Call of Duty Mobile got 100 million downloads in a single week. And then there's also all these other regions which have games that are specific to their language, right? With Portuguese and Free Fire. If you don't speak Portuguese, it's a lot harder to find information on the game. Mm-hmm. True with regions like India and especially China, right? So really a lot of stuff that's happening, a lot of stuff that's evolving really rapidly that you just got to keep on top of it. So definitely with a company like Esports Insider, one of the things that I've personally done is make sure that I crunch as many articles and stuff as you guys put out. At the very least, just reading like the executive summary part of it and really kind of trying to keep on top of it myself. But yeah, a lot of things going on in mobile. I'd love to even put out some more content myself as far as top news stories and stuff like that. So definitely something that I might personally be interested in doing too.
That's interesting. I actually want to know kind of your exact processes and roles and responsibilities at Complexity. So I assume it's more than just, say, scouting and managing teams. I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into that stuff. And these roles are never as simple as they can be condensed to sound,
Right. Yeah. So certainly, my core responsibility is recruiting and managing our mobile teams and content creators as well. But then also driving mobile initiatives in order to position Complexity at the forefront of any game that we're involved in. So I mentioned we have Fortnite Mobile at the moment, and one of the things that we did late last year was run a series called Mobile Mondays. And so this was basically a live and online event where we leveraged the GameStop Performance Center, which is our beautiful HQ out in Frisco. And ran a live event for Fortnite Mobile, but then also a complimentary online event. And so for that event specifically, I believe the numbers were 15,000 registrants or just under that, and then 5,000 participants at the peak. So big numbers, again, for mobile players in order to engage them from an online perspective. And so, yeah, all across the board, though, also looking out for sponsorships in the mobile industry. There's a lot of categories of companies that you see in PC and console that haven't quite entered into the mobile space yet. So what can we do as an innovator from that perspective to bring more companies in? And then also just taking each individual game itself that we're looking at and try to formulate a concrete strategy that's specific to that title. So if, let's say, if Complexity were interested in entering there, we can't just copy paste our strategy for Clash Royale into Free Fire because the market is totally different. And so certainly one of my responsibilities is to immerse myself in each of these games, really understand the players and the market and the ecosystem that's being developed from an esports perspective, and pair that with Complexity's brand and goals in order to find a fit. So that is very nuanced, but that's a big part of my job as well.
It sounds incredibly challenging to me. Like, I wouldn't know where to start. Like, what would you say like the hardest part of the job is, if there is one? I mean, like when you're fueled by passion and you're really interested in stuff, like the hardest parts are often the most interesting because you're like solving problems and such, right? But like, is there anything that you find particularly difficult or challenging and rewarding from the role?
Yeah, great question. So I think, let me answer it this way. So I think one of the biggest challenges that mobile as a category has, and this is something that also manifests itself, of course, in my personal role, but the biggest challenge that mobile esports has at the moment is how do you pair this predominantly casual player base with a competitive esports ecosystem? And it's very challenging. And I mentioned before that competitive scenes for even games like Clash of Clans can develop and be sustainable. But your strategy for operating a competitive esport must change for your market, right? And you have to do it to some extent. So that you engage the viewers and create fans and stuff like that. But you've got to find a bridge between what makes for a sustainable competitive esports ecosystem with the market and the actual player base. And so one example of that is what you'll see from Supercell esports titles. If you ever watch one of the broadcasts of CRL or especially Brawl Stars, they do this even more so, is the pace of the games themselves, the pace of the broadcast is really quick. They eliminate as much downtime as possible and get right back to the gameplay, because as a casual player, that's what you're mainly interested in. You want to see the game play. And as soon as they drop out of that and they go to like a caster segment where it's just two guys at a desk and it gets a little boring, then you see a viewership drop, right? So you've got to really engage and keep the attention span of the casual player from that perspective. But then at the same time, that can create nuances and challenges for the competitive side, because those types of segments are where player brands get built. And the organizational stories of this rival is going against this rival, like that's where you got to talk about that. So it's a constant balance of how can we make sure that we accommodate to all the stakeholders in the esports ecosystem, but at the same time tune things to a reasonable degree to casual players. So that's in my opinion, the biggest challenge right now for mobile esports is how to do that. And it's something that all the publishers are trying to find the right way to do and kind of crack that nut. But we're seeing a lot of progress and again, a lot of learning that's taking place from season to season, especially with esports like CRL. So it's exciting to see that. But again, I think over time, the player base as a whole is going to get a little bit more competitive. And so that's going to ease up. And then also publishers and tournament operators are going to get more wise as well about what things can be sacrificed, but then what things should be kept for competitive integrity and stuff like that.
Okay, no, that's really cool. And before I forget, because I know I will forget this if I don't bring it up, so it's kind of a harsh turn from the conversation we just had there, but. So, right. And I'm not going to try and get you to rag on Fnatic at all, right? But Fnatic are partnered with OnePlus, and yeah. they have like Fnatic mode, which I think is like some game mode on the phone, right? Which I assume is just like a performance optimization thing. Like, how good is that, right? Because I've seen it, and I've never really seen anyone talk about it. Like, and again, I'm not trying to get you to talk bad about people. I'll do that myself. That's fine. I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. But like, is it actually up to scratch and on not quite?
So listen, I'll say I personally have not tried the Fnatic mode, but I have heard a lot about it as you're talking about it. I've also seen organizations like Tribe Gaming, who have a partnership with OnePlus, talk about that as well. And OnePlus has also done sponsorships with Powerbang. You mentioned him a little bit earlier. So OnePlus is a company that's actually doing some great stuff in the mobile sports industry. Let me say this also, is that mobile titles, this is on the performance topic that Fnatic mode is really tapping into. Mobile titles are really interesting because, I hear a lot of people talk about how there are hardware limitations or, mobile will never be serious until you have the processing capabilities of a PC and stuff like that. And there are these games like Free Fire that pop up, and Free Fire actually got to be so widely popular because of its ability to run on low-end devices. And so it gives you this really robust battle royale experience that is playable on basically any smartphone. So you don't necessarily need like the latest gen tech in order to run mobile esports titles. And you certainly don't need that as a player in order to feel like you're part of the mobile esports industry, right? So it's this really interesting thing. So on the one hand, I totally get that you have this like awesome device in your hands. Like I've tried the Samsung S20 as an example. It's a beast. Like you have 16 gigs of RAM in your phone, and it's like 1440p screen, 120 hertz. It's insane. It's a PC in your pocket, basically. And so it's really a satisfying experience to play on something like that. But you also are able to just play on pretty much any device, and anybody basically can be a mobile gamer nowadays, which is one of the most optimistic things about this industry, is that it's so accessible to literally anybody. Yeah. And the thing that I hope to communicate as someone in the mobile esports industry to the broader esports industry is that think of mobile as one of the ways that the esports industry as a whole can grow and tap into new players, basically, because this is a platform that is able to be accessible to literally everyone. And take Call of Duty Mobile as an example, right? If and when Call of Duty Mobile rolls out a comprehensive esports plan for their game, this is going to be an incredible thing for participants in the Call of Duty League, because you're now gaining access to hundreds of millions, potentially, of new fans into your esports ecosystem also. So there's a lot of synergy that goes on between mobile and other platforms that is going to end up being a hugely beneficial thing for everybody as a whole.
Speaking of COD Mobile, so I downloaded it to see what the crack was, right? And it has quite a lot of Call of Duty formats, and if anybody who watches or listens to this should know, Call of Duty 4 is my game. Like, I'm literally unbeatable on it. Like, ask anyone, that's where I got my start. I refuse to be beaten. And I went 20-0 in Search and Destroy. I think it was Crash, on my very first game, right? Not a mobile gamer, as I say. So I say all that to say, when will you present me with my COD Mobile player contract?
Well, you're in a tough spot because you could go pro at that and Brawl Stars, I'm hearing too.
Anything I want. If I put my mind to it, mate, I'm in.
Yeah, we're gonna talk recruitment after this podcast. Also,
there we go. That's the whole reason I set this up, actually, just to get my my foot in the door, you know. But no, I've always thought that there could be a barrier to entry to mobile with if mobiles aren't really up to scratch. But so basically my iPhone 11 does run games. It seems to be fine. It actually used to crash on PUBG Mobile a lot. I never actually got a full game out on that. Now I think about it, but I also know it's not built with that kind of gaming in mind. They've got Apple Arcade on there. They want to push that shit and make more money, you know, and they want to limit you and stuff. But so OnePlus seems to be. Is that kind of like the flagship like manufacturer in mobile?
OnePlus is certainly one of the top players from that perspective. Samsung is also still huge. A lot of pro players also use Apple devices. Certainly, iPads are some of the more popular tablets. But we're getting so much more hardware than we've ever seen before. Also, companies like Razer that are releasing phones, and Asus has their own gaming phones as well. So a lot of momentum from that perspective. Yeah.
So, if it's this accessible and there's so many players, like I don't understand why it's not as big in the West. I can't wrap my head around it. And I know we've already kind of discussed like the shitty mindset they have, like the kind of derogatory mindset almost, where they're looking down on things as if it's not good enough. But when obviously it is, if they downloaded whatever game and played one of the pros, they would get absolutely smoked. So no, they can't say it's anything to do with that. Like there's no skill gap there or anything. It's it's legit as any other title in my eyes. It's just a different medium. But yeah, I can't wrap my head around why this kind of moment hasn't happened in the West yet. I don't understand it for the life of me, and it's the kind of thing where I will probably stay awake tonight thinking about it, and then end up like messaging you saying, "Oh mate, I'm having a meltdown. Please give me the answer." I don't understand it. It seems like it's just primed to just fucking like it should be there now. It should have already been there. God, that's winding me up now. This is why I shouldn't have opened the mobile esports box, because I'm never going to be the same again now. I want to apologise for how much of a grilling session this has become, because beforehand, to be transparent with those tuning in, I didn't really provide any talking points because I just wanted it to be like a natural conversation. I even use that. I say I don't like to manufacture things, but then I've just got so many fucking questions, and you have the answers, or at least like great insight into things. Whether you can't explain the exact reason why it hasn't taken off yet, like you can give a good insight. But yeah, it's just I couldn't help but just ask more, because there's so many questions for somebody who's uneducated and pretty ignorant like myself. I guess I could call myself ignorant, which is a shame. I'll try and change that from now on.
Educated. Give yourself a little credit. You're pretty educated too.
But yeah, I just want to apologise for how much of a grilling session it was. But I'd like to think that the people that watch who aren't really informed would also have similar questions and kind of feel like they've come out of things more educated. I definitely think... Well, I'll say this now. I would love to speak to you at some point for an article on Esports Insider to discuss mobile esports, if that is something you'd be interested in.
Absolutely.
And while I mention Esports Insider, I might as well just plug it quickly and say we're the leading esports business publication. Go to esportsinsider.com if you want to stay up to date with everything. I think at the time of recording, we've published 8 articles, 3 of them including our huge features. And the competition out there, and maybe done 2 or 3 pieces, and yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. I'm not trying to rag on anyone, though I would love to. I'm trying to be more sensible about stuff and not be so abrasive, which goes against everything I am. But trying to be a nicer guy. But no. So yeah, I would love to speak to you at some point on that. I trying to think if I've got any like real pressing questions, but I don't think so. You're the man with all of the answers.
Well, let me just say this on that topic of what it's going to take in the West.
I would love that.
This, right? So mobile esports is hands down biggest sleeping giant in the esports industry. And we've seen so much momentum, especially over the last 2 years, right? PUBG Mobile and Fortnite Mobile just launched 2 years ago. And the fact that those have grown and become what they are is absolutely fantastic. Last year, we had a game like Free Fire come up. Also Call of Duty Mobile late last year. This year, we've got Wild Rift coming out. It just seems like more and more momentum is being built in this industry. And when it comes to what it's going to take to really, gain presence in the West here and take off, I just can't help but believe that this is just so teed up because you've got everything required. You've got the infrastructure in place. You've got massive players. Like mobile gaming as a category is bigger than PC gaming and console gaming in the West. And you've got the mobile players there already. I know we keep saying this, but it's a matter of time, and I just can't help but believe that it's teed up and ready to take off. So certainly want to make sure that personally I'm in a position to continue building at the forefront and know that there's a lot of opportunities in the near future here for other people that are interested as well. So super, super excited about the future and the present of mobile esports, and really appreciate you having me on.
No, of course. It certainly seems like Complexity is primed to take advantage and not take advantage in that way, but jump on the wave and be there and ready when this moment does come into fruition,
Yeah.
And again, thank you for coming on and sharing your wise words, your ultimate wisdom on all things mobile. I really appreciate it, and I'm pretty sure we'll get a good response from this one. I just hope people are open-minded. That's the only thing. That's something I struggle with as well, actually, being completely honest with you. I'm quite closed-minded to a lot of things. If I've seen one thing that maybe I didn't agree with, I hate it for the rest of my life. But like PUBG Mobile, for example, I'll never try that again because it didn't load twice. It didn't let me stay in the game, so they fucked it there. I'll be honest with you. But no, I hope people are open-minded, and I do think we'll see some people pay more attention, including myself, from now on. So now is a chance for you. We'll wrap up now. We're both a bit busy men at the end of the day, and I've done as much grilling as I should. I shouldn't press any further. So yeah, if you like to plug yourself, however you wish, now is your moment to do so, mate.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, the best way to get in touch with me is probably on Twitter. You can reach out to me at MobileMatt. I'm also obviously on LinkedIn, Matt Rutledge. And you can also feel free to email me as well. My email is matt@mobileesportslab.com.
Lovely stuff, nice and simple. I like it. So go follow him. It makes sense. Stay on top of whatever the fuck's about to come because we know it's going to be huge. And thank you for tuning into episode X. I don't know what episode it is, so I'll call it episode X of the Adam Fitch Podcast. Out every Tuesday, everywhere you watch and listen to podcasts, basically. If I'm missing a platform, then fuck that platform. Let me know what it is, and I'll see what's going on there. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you on the next one.